Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of the Bamboo Lab podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Bosley. Folks, I've been excited to have our guest on for quite a while, and we tried to do it a few months ago, and then I had a glitch, and we couldn't do it. And what was 30, I don't know, maybe 31 years ago or so, I was working in the Ameriprise financial office in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And there was this kind of bullpen. And I got a chance to work with, I don't know, maybe 15 people, 12. It's been a long time. There was one particular gentleman that made an impact on me. And I was with the company for 5 years, and I worked with a lot of different advisors. And there were 4 or 5 that I just never forgot about. Like, they left an imprint on me. It was their work ethic, their character, their kind of the personality. And so over the past 2 months, the past 3 months, I've already had one of those gentlemen on the podcast. So now I'm bringing number 2 on. And this gentleman here was he was the first one who had an imprint on me at Ameriprise Financial 31 years ago or so. So today, folks, we have John Evangelista. John, my friend, welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast.
Thanks, Brian. I'm glad that we finally made this happen.
Dude, it's been 30 some years.
Yes, it has. And I tell you are somewhat infamous here in my firm. All of my advisors know who you are by name, just because you made an imprint on me back then, and I've known a lot of people in my career over the last 30 years, and yeah, you made an imprint on me, and that's why it's kind of a full circle moment now, talking this many years later.
That's crazy. And I was a blumbering fool back then, because that was kind of my first experience at all. I guess it was my second experience in any type of management position. I don't even know what the title was, training manager or something. It was kind of a part-time gig, really, because we still had to run our practices. But I remember those days fondly, and I can still remember exactly where you sat in that bullpen. At least my memory, when you'd walk in, it was to the left far corner in that area. Or was it the far right?
I still remember when you walked into the I still remember when you walked into the coffee room when I'm sight unseen, didn't know you from Adam, and you walked in, and I was getting coffee for a prospect that was sitting in the lobby, and you just introduced yourself, and you said, I don't know if you remember this, you're like, hey, I'm Brian Bosley, I'm your new training manager, and I was all excited, deer in the headlights a little bit, because it's relatively early on. And you said, so who's running this thing? And I looked at you probably like a young puppy and like, what do you expect my answer to be? And you just looked at me and said, well, let me give you a clue. It's not me. And I was like, and that set it off. And it was both scary but exciting, and we had a lot of fun, a lot of success that first year. So
yeah,
you got me started the right way.
Oh, thanks, brother. It was an honor. All right. Well, I've obviously got to know a lot about you from the beginning, and now we've been friends on Facebook. We've talked on the phone. We've kept in contact via text over the years. But can you please tell the Bamboo Pack audience out there a little bit about who you are, where you're from, childhood, family, who or what inspired you, whatever you want to share?
So I've really lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a long period of time. However, I was originally born in upstate New York. I'm a first generation Filipino American. My dad immigrated from the Philippines in 1961. Met my mom. My mom's family is all from North Dakota. So if you look at my image, you won't see the German, French, Canadian side of the family from my mom's side of the family. So sadly, come from a divorced family. And so mid part of 5th grade, my mom and my stepfather moved us from upstate New York, just outside of Albany, to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And for the most part, I really haven't gone very far. So the building in which you and I met here in Ann Arbor, my current office is maybe a par 5 away. It's less than probably 500 yards. Wow. So anyway, been in various offices, but so that's so that's how I ended up here, and generally that's who I am. I married to my lovely wife, Chris. I always say that we've been together since 1992, albeit we haven't been married that long, but I do want to give her credit for time served. And we were blessed with one son. We both came from larger families. However, I think we were both building our careers and got started a little bit later on that. But we are quite blessed with one son who just recently graduated from college and is now working for the firm. So that's exciting.
I did hear that, and I saw that. I think maybe it was on your website or something, or maybe you posted something. I saw that somewhere at one point. Mm-hmm. Now, where did he go to school?
So I went to Eastern Michigan.
Yeah.
So everybody always assumes just because I'm an Ann Arbor kid, been around here, I think the presumption for most people is, oh, you graduated from the University of Michigan. And I did not. I actually graduated from Eastern Michigan.
It's good school.
Aviation management major, because that had a lot to do with financial planning. So,
and where did John graduate from?
So the University of Alabama. So they have the specialized degree program. We mainly hire from the personal financial planning degree programs that are the precursor to hopefully sitting for the CFP exam. So John decided to go to Alabama and absolutely loved it and graduated in May. And I always like to say he's off the personal payroll and now he's on the professional payroll.
Well, congratulations, John. Well done. Alabama's an amazing school other when they play Michigan. And exactly. I think we texted you when they played Michigan in the playoffs a couple of years ago when they played them again. I remember texting you. Was that a tough choice for you?
A little.
Yeah.
So growing up in Ann Arbor, playing football in Ann Arbor, when you have Bo Schembechler, who comes into your 9th grade football group and is like, larger than life, and our high school was in the shadow of Michigan Stadium, so it's kind of hard to not love Michigan. Yeah. However, I have learned to love Alabama, and we're all dyed-in-the-wool roll tide people as well. So
that's good. They're both great schools. I'm a Michigan fan, not a man. I was went to Central Michigan University, but I met Bo Schembechler in 1983. At the field house in Ann Arbor when we were going to the state championship as a high school, and I was a junior high schooler. And that was one of my big claims to fame. And only met him the one time, but I was a diehard fan of his. I was young during the 10-year war between him and Woody Hayes, but I read all about it. And I've watched so many of those old games or those old clips over and over. So, well, that's awesome. Can you share a little bit about your firm with the audience and when you started that and kind of what you're about, as much as you can, and obviously with compliance and things?
Yeah, so as you know, and as we've already discussed, starting at American Express many years ago, so originally had intended, realized I was an early adopter to that fiduciary-based, that fee-based planning. As soon as American Express opened up that platform in 98, I was an early adopter to that. And realized that most of the people that I was advising and bringing on were coming at some point. They were coming for me and not necessarily for the blue box, as we used to say back then. And I also wanted to be quite clear that I didn't want my clients to confuse who I worked for and who I represented. So really right around 2001, even though people had left earlier, started contemplating going independent, as we say. In 2001, had started a due diligence process to consider where we would, go, with whom we would affiliate. And then 9/11 happened. Oh. And then I just realized it's like, okay, during this time, I'm not going to ask my clients to make a leap of faith and leave with me. So stuck around a little longer, 18 months. Business partner of mine at the time felt like he needed to leave, so he jumped across before I did. And then when I left American Express, believe it or not, I made a pretty significant decision to sell. So when I left American Express in 2003, when I finally did move over, now my wife happened to be pregnant at the time. So I don't know what I was thinking at the time to do this, but just chose to go independent. I sold a majority of my book of business. I had been advising 387 families at that point, and I started completely over for all practical purposes with 14 families.
Wow.
So even though you and I met in 95, I, for all intents and purposes, restarted my career in 2003. Now, challenges of that, I share with my wife, I've got you, you can stay home, let's have this baby, our first child at the time, thinking that we would have more. She left a well-established career, and because I shared with her, I've got us, we're covered. And that was naive, that was ignorant, that was not necessarily the best thing to do, and just try to start over with 14 clients, but I did it anyway. So that's kind of how independence happened. I would say how the current iteration, how we've arrived where we are now, and I'll maybe describe that a little bit more here in a minute. So some people that Tony Mazzelli, Ken Evangelista, people that I had known from American Express, we were affiliated loosely. They approached me in 2005 and said, hey, you know what? We've got another advisor, well-established, $1 million producer. And they said to me a very simple sentiment, which is, he's got all the resources and not a lot of time. And to be direct, you have more time and fewer resources. So what are your thoughts about you joining him? And so left Ann Arbor, even though I kept an office, hedged my bets maybe a little bit, and that was fortuitous that I did. Went up, worked with his principal, brought all of our systems and processes that we had already been utilizing individually in Ann Arbor, and legitimately took this from 1.1 million of revenue to 1.75 million of revenue inside of 12 months.
Oh, wow.
And then you're saying, well, what's bad about that? Well, realize at the end of that 12 months, when we were talking about the business plan for the next year, it's like, well, John, go get the business on your own. And I'm like, well, that's not why I'm here. Right. Yeah. And not gaining any recognition or acknowledgement that I had any part of helping this go from a 1.1 million to 1.7. So I realized at that point, it's like, you know what? This isn't for me. If I'm not going to be valued, if I'm not going to be acknowledged for, the time and effort, et cetera. So I decided at that point to come back to Ann Arbor. And then you may be familiar with Peter Montoya's book, The Brand Called You.
I'm not. No.
I don't know if you know that. Because a lot of times people ask, okay, Evangelist and Associates, wealth management for university faculty and staff, like how did that come to be? And so while I was still in Brighton, Michigan, I'm still working with this principal, I decided on my own dime, on my own time, I flew down to Miami, Florida, and I met, as you get these groups, they invite advisors from all around the country, and you explore this quote unquote brand called you. And so the simple premise, who do you work with? Who do you really like working with, and who really likes working with you? Right? Mm-hmm. So simple premise. So what do you do and who do you do it for? So here I am sitting in Miami. I'm sitting in this group of probably no less than 70 advisors. I was probably one of the younger ones there. And as I went through this discovery process there, I'm like, well, who do I like working with, and who really likes working with me? And really, it kind of started with my mom. My mom was a University of Michigan nurse. And what I realized, the people that really loved working with me and I loved working with them, there was a lot of consistency, and they were university faculty and staff. So we have, as you know, here in Ann Arbor, we have the University of Michigan. So, and I'll never forget, as we're going through this discovery process of exploring, can you have a niche, right? And you think about back then, most people were generalists.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Definitely in American Express, we're all generalists. It's like you have, as we used to joke, right? If you have $1 and a pulse, we'll work with you kind of thing. So at that point, to realize that, you know what, I'm going to take this leap. I'm going to narrow. I'm going to create this niche. I'm going to work with, and I'm going to provide wealth management for university faculty and staff. And really, the basis of that is it's going to attract the people you're looking for, and it's going to deflect the people that you're not looking for. And that's really how that started. So here to bring this back full circle. So I fly back. I am just pumped up. I am excited. I'm invigorated. I had this like crap of not being acknowledged for the success that we had over the last year. And I presented this business opportunity. I said, I don't even need to rebrand. I just want to put a separate tab on our website. And part of the reason I was able to help move the firm from 1.1 to 1.7 is there was unmined gold. There were unmined opportunities within that base. And a lot of them were faculty and staff, right, of U of M. So I present this business opportunity. Let's do this. And I'll never forget, this individual looked across the table from me and said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. That will never work. And here we are. Yes, that's a true story. So I realized at that point, I got to get out of here. So I reached out to one of my former compatriots who had also gone independent at that point. And I said, Chris, I got to get out of this town. Can I come back to the Ann Arbor office that he had? And he's like, come back home, basically. Yeah. So anyway, so that's how it all started. I know that was a long-winded explanation. And here we are, 21 employees, registered in 19 states. We advise faculty and staff from Yale to USC, from Michigan State down to Florida and Texas, Vanderbilt. I mean, you name it. So,
well, and that's one of the reasons too. I wanted to have you on. Of course, we've run over. I've run in the same circles as you have, more professionally in the past 6 years, and your name has popped up so many times. And I remember when I first heard your name, I'm like, "Hey, I know him." I didn't make the connection right away, and this is probably 5 years ago. I'm not even sure. Maybe it was through Tony or someone, and then I just started asking how you're doing, of course, and then I'm more blessed now that my daughter gets to associate with you quite often, and I mean, I've heard nothing but amazingly positive things about you and your firm, and when I heard that, it didn't surprise me, but it did make me smile, thinking, okay, he turned out exactly the way I thought he would when he was 20 some years old. And you've done it. You have done it. Your firm has an amazing reputation. And I think that's somewhat hard to do, to maintain a firm that's 20 some years in its running. When you don't hear anything negative about them, it's easy to do that if you're a firm that's 1 or 2 years old. You're in the glory, it's kind of like you're in those glory years, honeymoon phase. Everything's good. But when you hear so many good things over the years, and especially with a firm that's 21 years old. So, hey, by the way, I've got pulled up right now your wedding picture on Facebook. So you and Chris, I'm like, that's the face I remember, even though you've aged very well. I mean, I would spot you in a crowd. Like if somebody said, "Here, which one of these 150 people is John?" I'd say that's him right there, even if I hadn't seen your picture over the past 30 years. But that's
a little bit more gray. There's a little bit more gray there.
A little more gray. Yeah, it's okay. Well, I don't have any gray because I don't have any hair. So maybe that's your secret. Just cut your hair off. But no, you got good hair. I love it. So The question I like to ask everybody, John, you can talk about this over the course of your career. Let's just even say, over your life, you just call it. I don't care what time frame.
Okay.
What is one of the greatest challenges you've overcome, and then how did you overcome it?
I would say I would go back to that 2003, because I thought about that idea of challenge. And I think being a new dad, feeling that weight of the responsibility to know that my wife really, left what her career was at that point. We left that safety and that stability that I counted on as a new advisor, right?
Right.
I would not be where I am in so many different ways without Chris. And so she supported me when we were all young, broke advisors trying to make our way. And so then to really feel like I let her down, that I failed, that it presented more challenges, which should hopefully for new parents be this wonderful moment, this time. And, without going into too much, that person that had jumped across ahead of me in 2001, I thought I was kind of getting the band back together and feeling like we were going to grow a firm and grow a business together. And he was quite distracted and made some really bad decisions that impacted Chris and me significantly financially. And that's part of why I took the opportunity to go affiliate with that other principal. So it was a very tough time, that couple year time period, which was why it made it even more challenging to not feel wanted, not to be acknowledged or recognized when I felt like I was making a difference. And I felt like there was a real opportunity with that principal, that older advisor. And so that was a very, very tough time.
Well, it was a lot of things happening at once, too. I mean, you were probably only married,
It was.
You were married, 4 or 5 years at the time? Or
yes.
4 years?
Yes.
And
we got married in 99. Yep.
Gosh. Well, it's amazing how, do you think, though, when you look at that challenging time, do you think if that was if that somehow had been stripped from your experience, do you think you'd be where you are today? Or were you able to use that as a learning and a motivation to get to where you are today?
I absolutely did use it as motivation. So, coming from a divorced family, my dad, especially once we moved out to Ann Arbor, I was the classic kid of a divorce, right? So I saw my dad twice, 2 weeks in the summer and then over the holidays, over Christmas break, right? So I always wanted his recognition. I wanted him to feel proud of me, right? And I wanted to feel that in his recognition and awareness of what I was doing, and I wanted him to be proud of his son, kind of thing. So I guess the point of that is, feeling like I was letting it down, like letting people down.
Yeah.
And so even though I felt like I made choices that I thought were going to work out, were going to make my life and my family's life better, and it didn't work out that way through, both individuals that were in my life professionally at the time. And so absolutely. So then then having that sense of purpose, though, that's why I say that brand call, you having that clarity of purpose, having that clear mission of, now I know what I'm going to do. Now I know exactly who I want to be. These are people who care about me and I care about them. I want these people, because back then, Brian, most of the university, and it really hasn't changed that much over the last 30 years, this is a group of people who have been generally ignored by most financial firms. And I understand why, because they generally can't understand how to monetize that client. Right. However, I believe so many more people should have retired from the University of Michigan as multi-millionaires. And it's not that they didn't want to, it's because they didn't know how to. So that clarity and that challenge, that principal kind of put down. He probably doesn't know that he kind of helped me in that, in a twisted way, which is, and Chris will tell you this story, and it really hasn't changed much with our firm today, which is kind of embodies our core philosophies and our core values, that whether you have 5,000 or 5 million, we treat everybody the same. We take everybody through the same exact process. And so that motivation of, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove to you that this is not the dumbest idea. And I'm a very competitive person. I don't know if you remember that. I don't like to be bad at anything. And don't get me wrong, my handicap's higher than it should be on the golf course. But it doesn't mean I don't want to always get better and be the best at everything that I'm doing. I generally don't know how to do anything halfway. 9 years ago, I started raising bees as a hobby. I started with 2 colonies, and now I've got honey on store shelves. And, we're producing thousands of pounds of honey. So as Chris will tell you, if you were here, I generally don't know how to do anything halfway. So
yeah, I love that. Hey, I had some of your honey. I think I sent you a picture.
Oh, good.
Didn't I send you a
That's
picture?
right. I think you did.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. It's amazing. Yeah, my daughter told me, she goes, "Hey, you got to try some of this." I'm like, "Why?" She goes, "It's John's honey." I'm like, "What?" I had no idea that you raise bees. It's interesting though, when you talk about using that time frame as a motivation. I'm so, I think when you get older and you get more experience, and you get a lot more, failures behind you in life, you realize the beauty of failures. You realize the beauty of mistakes or dark moments in your life. You don't realize them when you're going through them. I don't think even at my age, I recognize them as a learning, but it's still hard to get through those. But every one of those failures, if you handle it right, are always the big impetus to your successes. I had a dear friend of mine call me or texted me last night as I literally was crawling into bed, and this person said, "Are you busy?" I said, "I'm actually literally calling to bed, but I can talk." So they called me, had a really challenging day yesterday, really a momentous day. And we talked about using, and this is a little bit thicker probably, or maybe a little deeper, but it's sometimes you have to go to a dark side. You have to go and really experience that pain you're going through, or that fear, or whatever it might be. And you got to there's always that in that dark side, there's always a power and a strength. And I think if you can harness the power and strength from that dark side, that you can get, and I don't mean go into a dark, deep, heavy depression, but when you can really experience that pain and feel it without trying to run away from it, and you're aware of it, you're intentional about the feelings that you're, kind of extrapolating your feelings. You can pull a lot of power out of that. You really can. And a lot of people do that intuitively. They just do it. They use it as a motivation. But sometimes you can dig deep down there. And I've done that a couple of times in my life. And I always find big moments of not just professional, but personal advancements that come after a failure, or come after a challenge or a dark period of my life. There's always, the next level always seems to be maybe a level of some type of happiness or success that I didn't really realize I could have achieved prior to that moment happening. And so I try to tell people, man, if you're going through something dark right now, ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? So what am I learning from it? And then how can I deliberately and intentionally use this moment to do something that I never would have done, positive thing that I never would have done had this moment never occurred? Because there's a silver lining in all those clouds. So it sounds like you did exactly that. So well done, my friend. I like looking through your pictures here, and I just kind of click every once in a while. So when with my finger, when I'm done talking, I look over to see what the next picture is. You at an Alabama game, you at a Michigan game, you and Chris getting married, you hanging out with John. So good stuff, brother. What do you think, John, in the past 12 to 24 months has been one of your greatest learnings?
I would say that, as I've continued to grow the company, as I've continued to develop as an advisor, and really understanding that I've been building a business, I'm not building a practice, that what I've learned, and because I give a lot of thought to this, I reflect a lot about what makes us different. It's usually, I'm in the process of interviewing interns and potential new hires next year. And it's a common question of like, what makes you different? And what I've realized over the last 12 months, I would say mainly the last 12 months, I've come to a realization, and it's really impacted how I mentor and develop the next generation of advisor now, which is great clients can help you create a great revenue stream, but great relationships create a great life. And that's, to me, I used to talk to all my advisors as we put our business plans together of how many new clients they are going to take on next year, as an example, because we're in the midst of getting ready for our 2026, business planning. And I thought about it. Most of my whole career, we've always talked about clients, households. And I realized that's what's helped us become a by referral only, like this gold standard of what everybody wants, but few people ever have. And what I realized, that's something that I embody, that is me. I can't separate me as a person as me as an advisor, is the relationships that I have with my quote unquote clients. Is I have more relationships than I have clients. And I do stuff with my clients outside of, whether we go on vacations with each other, whether we play pickball with each other, whether we play golf with each other, whether we drink bourbon, or, all of these things that we do together that extend outside the office. And, I sadly, I'm going to try and keep this together here for a couple minutes. So I lost two of my longest clients last week, and we were in Italy. One was expected, I was blessed, which is another life lesson of just don't wait. Luckily, client's wife reached out to me in August and said, "Hey, I know you're planning on coming out here to Hawaii to come see us around Christmas time, but he's lost 25 pounds. I don't think he's going to make it." And so I got to the office the next day, and I looked at my staff and I said, "I'm going to Hawaii." And they're like, "What are you talking about? You're going to Hawaii?" I said, "I'm going to Hawaii. I'm going to say goodbye." So when I was sitting there with him in his bed, in his living room, and sitting there with his wife, and I'm sitting there with his stepdaughter and his step-granddaughter, and he's just smiling at me. He said something you said. He said, "John, you look exactly the same," because we don't get to see each other, right? And he says, you haven't aged. And he's just got this huge smile. And I looked at him and I said, "Al, how do you feel?" And he said, "I don't know. I can't tell you how I feel, but all I feel is love." And it's hard for me to even tell that story right now. But what I realized is, as I've reflected on this year, is the relationships I have that have enriched my life. And I've been blessed, right? By having them in my life. And I have a saying here, I expect our clients to have a better life with us in their life. And so both of these gentlemen who were some of my longest clients, and to lose them and to realize that sense of loss of I will miss those conversations. I'm going to miss that relationship. And that's the part where I had already started prior to this last month, changed my conversation with my next generation advisors, and really changed that dialogue of, I want you to think about how many relationships you have with the people you see every day. versus the number of clients that you can count on your, book of business. And so that's, I would say to you, kind of that encapsulating moment, that encapsulating value statement of just recognizing that what's made a difference is the relationships. The advice, hopefully, as we all should hope, being a financial advisor is providing good financial advice. However, a key difference is I've seen these people beyond the zeros on their statements, and it doesn't matter how many zeros are on there. So I have these deep relationships with people that love coming in. I love seeing them. They love seeing me. And, business gets in the way of our conversation about life, if that makes sense.
It does, man. That might be one of the best answers I've ever heard to that question. So first of all, rest in peace, Al. I did see that on your post, and, it's very, very touching. It's interesting that you talked a while ago when we first started talking about when you kind of branched off and you had this, you used the term clarity of purpose. And I think so many advisors could learn a lot about that, because obviously when you had that clarity of purpose of what you want to do, that was the seed to then how you eventually built this business on relationships and really loving. I mean, you almost never hear of an advisor using the word love when they refer to their clients, but that all started probably back in that time when you decided, you kind of knew you read the book, what is it? The brand is. Mm-hmm. I just put it I put that in my mailbox actually on Amazon while we were talking. I did. That was written quite a few years ago, but I'm sure it's still
quite a year. Yeah,
quite a bit.
I'm what we call a dinosaur. I always say I'm a dinosaur.
I still read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I still read some of those old classics a lot just to kind of keep myself grounded on some of the stuff that taught me. But I think that's a really rare, and I think it's an incredibly important aspect for, especially when you're working with somebody for 20 years, 30 years. If you don't cross a little bit of that boundary of having some really strong emotions towards someone, I think it's almost kind of indicative. It's almost an indictment on someone's inability to feel emotion, because you work with your clients, obviously, in one of the most intimate parts of their life, which is their money. Mm-hmm. I mean, I got to a point probably 4 or 5 years ago where I've gotten very close to some of my clients. I mean, so they become my best friends. And every day text, good morning, brother. I love you. Sometimes after a coaching session, I love you, man. Bless you. I love you. Tell your family. I said, I think that, and here's the thing, John, you know how you caught me in my early stages of my career where I was really inexperienced. I was very insecure as a leader. I didn't know what I was doing. So what I did was act tough. And probably, I'm obviously I had my personality was still, I was an adult, so it was it was different than it is now. But I was still, I think, a kind person. But I would do things just because I thought it was the right. Because to be a leader, you had to be tough. To mentor, to coach, to consult, whatever. You had to be tough. Had to be a badass. And I did that after I left the company back in 1996, American Express, and started, my current practice, my current business. I kept that going with my clients for probably a decade and maybe 12, 13, 14 years. And I realized how draining that was for me. Like I was swimming against the current because I was trying to make myself this kind of callous business consultant who, focuses on results only, and, which results obviously the most important thing, or at least they're there with relationships right at the top. But I was all about that. And I realized how draining it was for me until I decided, wait a minute, just be me. Be nice. And it took me probably several months or a year to kind of make that transition or migration. All of a sudden, I've got better clients. Where the results are better. I love working with my clients now. I get up on Monday mornings like most people get up on Christmas morning. I'm excited to work. I have a passion for it. And it's because I decided just be a human being. And if you're working with somebody for years or sometimes even months, you build a relationship with them. And there's no problem. I think it's beautiful to kind of expand that or to at least, not try to hide behind it, to let it be what it is. So I love it. By the way, So this might be kind of the same kind of question, but maybe it's on the same lines. Is what do you consider, John? 30 some years in the business. I've been with Evangelista and Associates for 21 years. Yeah, 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You got an amazing practice. What's a win for you right now in life?
Yeah. So win in life right now is really what I see as my role moving forward, in not totality, but as a significant part, is seeing the advisors that I have educated and mentored, the development of those advisors, helping to get better faster. I would say that when I'm interviewing, especially if it's somebody that is coming in with years of experience, or even because in this hyper-competitive world of these students coming out with specialized degree program, it's like, why should I come work for Evangelista and Associates? And I would say it's almost like parents, right? We all want our kids to maybe be a little bit better than us, like have a little bit better life than we had, right? If we experience, trials and tribulations, hopefully maybe to minimize those. I don't want to necessarily eliminate those. I want them, but it's the wins that I see is seeing my younger advisors succeed, seeing them when those light bulb moments go on, or seeing that when we have our holiday party for our clients at a local restaurant here in Ann Arbor, and clients are walking up to me who I've never met them. I mean, that's a weird experience for me at this point, right? Where clients are coming up at that holiday party and they're like, hey, you know what? Emily's awesome. Or Nicole's doing a great job, or Wyatt, or, so my wins are seeing them win. Right. And seeing the impact that they're making in people's lives, and that they bought in, because as you know, this is not an easy business. I've really tried to stay true to what all of you put into us back then. Obviously, modified it in some ways, but not drastically so. You might be surprised to hear that. So really the wins are seeing the wins, seeing them accomplish their goals, seeing them attain their annual goals before December 31st, right? Seeing the excitement when they set their business plans for the next year, and there's this fear and there's terror, like, I know you're never going to be happy, John, in a friendly way. You're going to want my goals to be bigger and badder next year. And I have no idea how it's going to happen, but you have faith that it's going to happen. So I think it's just going to happen. So that's a win for me. It's to see the growth of the company through their efforts, through their eyes, to see and develop that next generation. And that's why I'm excited that my son has decided to come into the business, is, hopefully help him be a better advisor than I am. Right. Honestly.
Sure.
Because that's what our community needs. That's what our clients need. That's what their kids need. So we're all about intergenerational planning as well. So as I think about what are the wins, it's more of an internal assessment. It's not, how does our broker-dealer view us? Where do we fall in a hierarchy of them? You know what I mean? Right. So, so that's how I would define that.
A lot of people ask me when I first start coaching them, somebody who might be in an executive position or who wants to be in a leadership position, I ask them to define leadership, and they give me all these bullshit answers, really. And I mean, they're partially correct. And I always tell them, you're on the right track. But I think leadership is one thing. It's increasing the sense of self-worth of the people around you. And, sometimes, that can be a form of inspiring them, Sometimes it can be holding them accountable. It can, sometimes they need to see a side of you they don't want to see again, so to speak. It has to be a lot of things. And it sounds to me exactly what you're doing. When you talk about this idea of, with, John going to be let's get him to be a better advisor than I am, and all the other advisors you're working with, make them better than me. That's this old idea that my friend always tells me as parents, our job is to push our children further up the stream than we were pushed. And their job is to push and that's what, obviously evolution is, I guess, microevolution anyway. So I think that's great. Well, I mean, it's obviously why the reputation of the firm is so good. So, this is my favorite question. And I love this one. So if I were to drive down from Marquette, Michigan, all the way to Ann Arbor, Michigan today and pull my time machine, John, and we were to go in, you can go back to any stage of your life from childhood till yesterday. And if you could sit down and talk to your younger former self, what words of wisdom, recipes for success, or advice would you give your younger John?
Well, this will, okay. So from my perspective, because you and I, through when we correspond and you post certain things and it doesn't surprise me a lot of the things that you post that I'm like, well, of course he feels that way because I feel the same way. So let me tell you one that I would not be where I am without the team that I have. Mm-hmm. And that team is my company, my work group, but my family, my group of friends that is not huge. It's small, but important, right? So surrounding yourself with the best people. And I the adage much better than I am, but I think you posted it maybe a month ago or a couple weeks ago, which is, if you're in a room of, be in a group of 5 intelligent people, who are you? You're the 6th, right? So I would say surrounding yourself with the best teammates possible, the people that are there for you, that are going to support you. They're going to be not necessarily yes people, but they're going to be people that will buy into what you want your life to be, and they're going to enrich that. And that has helped me. And again, I'm going to relate this back to being a child divorce. My mom was a single mom here in Ann Arbor. She's at the hospital most of the time. I have, there were 4 kids here. And, my sister helped. She was older. She was kind of a little bit surrogate mom for me in some ways, but she was trying to live her own life. And so my teammates, playing football, that's why I love everything team. I love teams because it's made a difference in my life. So number 1, surround yourself with the best team possible, and recognize when you don't have a good teammate is, cutting that relationship. And I don't know if it was Maya Angelou or whatever. Somebody said the same. Once somebody shows you who they truly are, believe them the first time.
Right. I love that.
Right.
I love that.
And so I learned that late. So, and that's the part where we generally always want to. I haven't lived a perfect life. I've made mistakes. I've made more than my fair share, and people have still kept me in their lives. Right. Sure. However, and I know that we all will come across people who at some level do not have our best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. Right. It doesn't make them good or bad people. It's just they're not the right people for us. So recognizing that earlier and eliminating those people, creating boundaries, creating, where you, even if you have to have them in your life, that you're going to, create some boundaries there. So surrounding yourself with the best team possible and recognize when you don't have somebody that should be there with you. Right. 'Cause for me, it's all about the journey now. Right. So, everybody asks me now, it's like, okay, what's the next goal? Where's the next? And I am a planner. This should not surprise you. I had a goal by the time I was 60. Today's my 57th birthday. So today is literally my birthday.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, brother.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So, but and you taught me back then, and it's in all the books, A is A, right? So I have a goal. When I was 50, I said to myself, I want to work with clients and staff that I look forward to seeing every single day. So that's where I started 7 years ago. So I just turned 57. So then I set the business plan of where we expect to be by September 16th of 2028. Now, my business partner, Emily, she's always like, John, December 31st. Can we just say December 31st of 2028? And I said, no, Emily, A is A. Like I said, I wanted to do this and hit this by the time I'm 60, because that's just the way I'm wired. Right. So I guess the point of that is getting the right people on your bus, right? As they say, even recognizing, I had a client many years ago, Brian, I was at American Express, still get to see him around Ann Arbor. He's a sailor. So he had a 38-foot Catalina. So I know people that are sailors, and I know people that have power boats. And I asked this gentleman, also his name was Al, interestingly. Yeah. And I asked him, Al, I said, what's the difference between power boats and sailboats? He says, let me tell you. So power boaters, it's all about the destination. Sailors, it's all about the journey. Ooh. I know. And I was like, okay, so now it's about this journey that I'm on. And there are waypoints. That's what I'm saying. There are clear business goals and objectives. There are clear family goals and objectives. So there are clear timelines, deadlines, goals, objectives. However, it's more about the journey than necessarily a destination, right? And the last thing I'll say, which I do believe for me personally and professionally, when I think about my outcome versus the outcome in a lot of different ways of my direct family, right? That at some point, and so this is where I would say to my younger self, to answer your question in a very long-winded way.
I love it.
Is don't be a prisoner of your past. We all make mistakes. All of us. Most of us have been dealt a blow. Like my parents never thought they were going to get divorced. Like I was 9 months old when my parents divorced. I never knew my family as a nucleus family, right? Mm-hmm. I was 9 months old.
Right.
So where I think about what held me back in times of life, when I think about what's held some of my siblings back, I love my brother Joe. My brother Joe was higher intelligence than me. He was always better at math than me. I love my brother Joe. My brother Joe, unfortunately, could not move past some bad decisions that he made and things that happened. And it's not easy to let those things go. But I would definitely say with Chris coming into my life, I think it helped that she was a psych major at Michigan. So
we all need one of those.
We all need one of those. And I've got one in-house. So she helped me understand that it didn't matter that my parents were divorced. It didn't matter that I wasn't on the right track when we met. It didn't matter. It just like, and it really drives me today. I make the decisions that I can with the best information available. And, you think about whether it's hiring, not everybody that gets hired here has succeeded here. It doesn't make them good, doesn't make them bad. It's just maybe not the right place for them. Right.
Yeah.
And so don't be a prisoner of your past. Recognize that we all make mistakes, understand and acknowledge that we're all flawed in a lot of different ways. But how do we learn from that? How do we move forward from that? How do we get better from that? Because tomorrow is another day. Today, I do get to wake up and say to myself, I can make this day anything that I want it to be. And if all I'm thinking about is the mistake that I made yesterday or last week or last month or 6 months ago, or God forbid, my mom, God rest her soul, remember, I was 9 months old when they got divorced. And at one point, I finally said to my mom, and I want to say it was probably when I was in my 40s, Brian. And I looked at her and I said, Mom, Dad got remarried. Dad has 2 new kids. Dad has moved on. You haven't. The only life you're not living is yours. Everybody else is moving on. And it saddens me to know that you still have not let go. You are a prisoner of your past. And I want you to enjoy the rest of your life, whatever left of life you have. And so my mom's example, albeit a sad one, honestly, it was sad. To the day that she died a couple of years ago, we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary for her passing away. That's probably one of my most sad moments, that she never let go. She was just continued to be a prisoner of her past. And it motivates me to be mindful of, even when things don't go right, what can we learn from that, and how can we move on from that? I would say my younger self is, don't be a prisoner of your past. Understand that tomorrow is a new day.
I think those are two of the better examples I've heard of that. That's the second question I can honestly say is probably in the top 5 or 10 best responses I've heard today. And I think when people ask me so often, John, is, I get texts or phone calls from clients, or mostly clients that I've either worked with in the past or currently do, and they'll ask me, what is your definition of success? And I always, not definition of success. What is the key to success? If you had to give one, I always say, look around and see who you associate with. It's who you marry, who you date, who you but it's just the people you associate with most, whether it's teammates, whether it's colleagues, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's spouses, whatever it might, partners, whatever it might be. Because I do think that, as you had mentioned, I really like the idea of, being okay that sometimes you have to cut relationships. Because some people are nourishing to us and some people are poisonous to us. And it doesn't mean they're bad necessarily. Sometimes they might be, but a lot of times it's simply because there's something that they can't give you and you can't give them, or maybe it's something you're both draining from each other. And people say, well, how do you know if someone's as a person you can associate? And I always say 3 things. It's real simple. Do they celebrate with you when you do something well? Do they support you when things are going tough? And do they challenge you when you're doing something stupid? If people are doing those 3 things and you're doing them back to them, probably a good relationship, probably a solid, nourishing relationship. If they're not, maybe you have to consider getting them out so you can fill them with somebody better for you. And that tends to be pretty accurate across the board. It really does. I can tell. I do this thing, John, called a CLR. It's a simple, stands for conscious living reminder. And I have 33 things on a sheet of paper. It's a spreadsheet. And I have to do each one of those a certain number of times every week. So to give you an example, one is, how often do I contact my mom? That's 7 times a week. She has to hear from me. My kids, how much protein I put in my body, how much I exercise, run, lift, whatever, right down to really how much I read every week. And I don't ever get so everyone has a different number, because I don't do certain things 7 times a week. I take a cold shower 6 days a week, but I call my mom, or I contact my mom 7 days a week. But they all have to be met, or at least 29 have to be met every week. I have to complete at least 29 of them, get to fruition. I've only gotten 33 once in all these years that I've got all of them. Where was I even going with this? Oh, I know what it is. And then I track it. So when I'm done every week, I put it on a line chart. And I can see when my numbers are down, like 16, 17 that I completed over a course, that week. I ask myself, who was I with that week? What was I doing differently? And it almost always associates with, I was hanging out with somebody, not a bad person, but I was associating maybe that week or that time frame with somebody who isn't really somebody I should be hanging out with a lot. And when I'm peaking at like 31, 32 a week for a period of time, who are the people I mostly associated with during that time? And it correlates just like it's a perfect correlation every single time. And so I have some kind of quantifiable measures to be able to work to just validate what you said. So folks, I think you want to go back and listen to what John said over the last few minutes, because I think those are 2 of the greatest pieces of advice you can get. Make sure that, surround yourself with good people and don't be a prisoner of your past. If you do those 2 things right now, your life will start dramatically changing over the next few months. So, all right. Final question, John. Is there any question I didn't ask that you wish I would have? Or is there anything a final message you want to leave with those Bamboo Pack members out there?
A question that you should have asked me. No, I think the continuing to be as I do, right? I think where we're going next and what we're doing and what I think I wish more people, and again, I don't know all of your audience, however, I'll speak to maybe more of the financial advisors on this podcast.
There's a lot of them out there.
Not that, yeah, is really, we have so many more people coming into our world. We have so many programs, Kansas State, Texas Tech, all of these specialized. We have all of these people who are coming into our industry. And people need what I would coin as like that old family doctor that knew you from cradle to grave. And I think it's our responsibility, I view it as mine, is to really stop thinking about necessarily, and I understand why we have to. It really irritates me, and I understand from a business perspective, creating account minimums, and we won't talk to anybody unless they have 250,000 or more. And I understand from a business perspective why that is. It's just, there's a population that needs us. And so making sure that we are building good people as advisors and not just good clinicians is the way I would say that, right? People who have just as good of a bedside manner as opposed to just the technical knowledge. With the University of Michigan and other healthcare systems that I advise clients, there's some good good doctors. There's some, better, doctors, but the best ones, the greatest ones, usually have a combination of the technical and the people part. And so as I think about moving forward, as I think about helping the population in a day and age, I hate to say it, where, everybody's more polarized and more people are, seeing negative in people instead of positive. And I think, making it a positive impact on somebody and understanding, kind of going back to that immigrant story of my dad coming here, is my dad wanted us to have a better life. And that's why he came to the United States. It's like, we don't have to be immigrants to understand that. We can just, are we making the next generation? Are we making the clients and understand the generational change that we can make, that we should all be excited about, regardless of whether or not, they have a seven-figure or six-figure account. So, defining your value system to me has been important to me. And coming from a Filipino family, which I don't know if you know many Filipinos, it's kind of a joke because Ken Evangelista is an Italian evangelist. I always tell people they're Italian evangelistas and Filipino evangelistas because everybody always says, "Oh, I know an evangelista," and I'm like, okay, well, are they in architecture, construction, or something like that, or are they like in medicine, doctors, nurses? If they're in construction and architecture, they're probably Italian. And if they're in medicine, they're probably Filipino. I'm probably related. So the importance of that, the relevance of this question is, I thought I was going to follow in my dad's footsteps because half of my aunts and uncles are doctors. My dad's a retired vascular surgeon. So I was able to, even though he told me he didn't want me to go into medicine, and that's a whole other story, it was about bringing what I felt I would have been as a clinician, as that family doctor that knew you from cradle to grave, that knew you your whole life. And I wanted to embody that as a financial advisor and express myself in that way. And that's will not surprise you that I work with a ridiculous number of clinical staff. Yeah. Both doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, you name it. And so when values are clear, decisions are easy, as I say. So I would say that's another key thing is I've realized who values what I do and who did I value my relationships with. And it makes it a lot easier to say no to opportunities. So I guess that's probably an answer.
When you were saying that, what came to my mind was, and something I've never really thought of before, but when you think about, let's stick with the financial advisors, I think good financial advisors change their clients' lives, and they do. But a great financial advisor changes the world. And I think that's true with a lot of professions. Like when you focus on the relationship, you focus on the value system, you focus on building good people, not just good advisors, but good people that become great advisors. That's that critical mass that you can provide in any industry. If you're leading, training, mentoring, role modeling, coaching, whatever it might be, it's work on the person, getting them to be a better human. Because one of the things I see, John, in leadership is when somebody, hires me to coach my leadership, the first thing I do is I spend the first few months with them on them. We start with leadership of self. And they always say, well, wait, I want to get leadership techniques and styles and strategies and tactics. I'm like, no, dude. You got to lead yourself first. If you can't lead yourself, you're not leading anybody effectively. And I think that seems like what you're doing with your advisors, that you're training and bringing in. And do you ever look back? I know and not every advisor you've ever trained or coached has stayed with you, but do you ever look back and see those other advisors that are no longer with you, but they're doing well out there and just kind of get a sense of pride?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. It's the greatest feeling.
Yes, I do. Yeah, it is a great feeling. And to know that you had a part in that, and also to feel the pride of when they want to reach out and just check in and hey, what are you up to? This is what I'm up to. And, seeing their lives and staying connected to some of those people, is rewarding.
Yeah.
And definitely, and keeps us connected to our past as well, which I think we need to. It can't just always be looking forward. It's also being appreciative of from where we've come.
Yeah.
And who has been in our life. So that has been quite rewarding, and probably not going to surprise you when I say this. It's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like the high school reunion, which I'm about to have my 40th next year. And you realize when you go to these reunions and you see these people that you're like, why don't I have these people in my life anymore? Right. And then there's some other people that you're like, okay, I understand why these people aren't in my life anymore. But so it's probably the same way that you might express and what I might express as people that we've touched, professionally over the years. Kind of like what you said at the beginning. It's just they're the people that you still smile about and say, yep, they did succeed. They did, they did make it. So that was a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, bless you, man. That's awesome. Let's wrap it up. Yeah, I know you're busy, and I squeezed an hour and 6 minutes out of you. So I know you got to go. Can you stand for just a couple of minutes after we sign off here?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, brother. John, I appreciate this. I haven't been taking as many notes. When I first started, I was just taking so many notes that I was not, like 4 years ago, I felt I was not as engaged in the conversation. But this one, I had to take a lot of notes. This was one of the more, here's the way I'll put it. Some of my guests makes my time on the air a little more difficult because you really have to pull information out of them. And then you get those few, I'll give one is, why can't I think? Frank Mossett. He is one I've had on
Frank.
Twice, man. And I just let him go. I'm like, dude, and he talks and you just go on. There's been several, Doug Linick, Bill Williams was like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few of those guys. I did that interview a few weeks ago with Marshall Goldsmith. He was like that. And it was just like, this is so easy. I'm just sitting here as a student learning. And I'll throw another question out when there's a pause. When he's done, boom, or she's done, or whoever it is. That's what today was. This is one of the easiest podcast interviews I've done in almost 4 years of doing this, just because the information just flew. And like I always share, what people are looking for is some signs of hope. They're looking for inspiration, some words of wisdom. You delivered a 10 out of 10 on this one, brother. So thank you so much for being such an amazing guest on the Bamboo Lab podcast.
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in this week. I'll talk to you all here in the near future. As you can probably notice, I have not been putting in a podcast episode once a week like I was for a while. But we do have a number of amazing guests lined up, just like the one we had today with John. So please stay tuned, stay patient. Please smash that like button, rate and review us, and please share this particular episode with at least 3 people. All you got to do is it's easy to hit it and share it to somebody through text or email. Just want to let you know I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in when we every week or so. Talk to you soon. In the meantime, please get out there and strive to give and be your best to the world. Please show love and respect to others and back on yourself. And by all means, please live with intentionality. Appreciate each and every one of you.